So I'll just take a deep breath for a moment. Yeah. As we begin the reflection, let me ask your indulgence for the personal nature of this reflection. My hope is that through the thoughts about the inspiring sources that have led me here, that you will come to discover that your glass is neither half empty or half full, but always refillable. That with an open mind and an open heart, we are spiritually reborn over and over throughout our life's journey. This congregation is a house with 100 gates, and no two of us enter at exactly the same angle. The angle we enter is based in our search for truth and meaning of the experiences we have in our lives, based in our fourth principle. The roadmap for this search is the nexus between an open mind and an open heart and transformative sources and experiences. In the Christian vernacular, we are reborn. In the UU tradition, we are not born once, but over and over and over. This is our version of the truth of our own soul salvation. My hope this morning is to share with you the sources that have lit my pathway to this place, some of which you may know. You've heard me tell many stories, many of you, about these experiences. For others, these sources may be new to you. Hopefully, these sources will inspire you with a desire to revisit the sources that have been meaningful and transformational in your own life and what brought you here today. I was raised Catholic initially, and then mostly Southern Baptist. Quite a contradiction. If it is true that what we learn in our earliest childhood is no doubt a factor in my becoming a UU. My first transformational experience occurred when I was 15, and it had an all too powerful impact on me. I was invited to speak to the Board of Deacons at my Baptist church in small town Texas. These were powerful men of the community, older, powerful people who were leaders in the community. As I began walking up the stairs to the meeting room, a power came over me, a channeling experience where words formed in my mouth, ideas in my head that I had no idea where they came from. As I spoke to these men about some problem with the youth program, I can't even remember what it is now. All I remember is that these men began to cry. The experience left me confused, unsure of what had just happened. It led me to many questions about what I now know to be one of our primary sources, the direct experience of transcendent mystery and wonder. I certainly didn't then know what had happened to me or what had happened in that moment. Looking back on it now, I understand it in that context. In my college years, I developed what I call an early version of universalist thinking, all by myself. I didn't know what UUs were. I didn't know they existed. I didn't know we existed. The values that emerged in me later would become articulated in the 7 UU principles that are our guideposts for life. As a Southern Baptist lay minister at that time, I led youth revivals and was a leader in the Baptist Student Union of 15,000 students at Texas Tech. Somewhere around my 3rd year of school, I slowly but surely woke up to stirrings of how deeply different my values were than the religion and the peers that I knew in the Baptist faith. I slowly but surely felt the emergence of values of being anti-war, values of wanting to fight against the racial tensions that existed in my church and in my community. My friends told me over and over at that time how I was so open-minded my brains fell out. What gave me hope in that time of confusion were sources of words and deeds of prophetic men and women who gave me the great gift of seeing and feeling a clearer understanding of who I am and how I fit into the world. Let me read you one of my favorite sources that ironically I first encountered while attending a Baptist seminary. It still resonates deeply with me today. It's called The Unknown. Now the unknown has become a steed that I can mount in order to reach the unknown, and the plain has turned into a ladder on whose steps I climb to the summit. My soul spoke to me and said, "Do not measure time by saying there was yesterday and there shall be tomorrow." And before my soul spoke to me, I imagined the past as an epoch that never returned, and the future is one that could never be reached. Now I realize that the present moment contains all time, and within it, all that can be hoped for, done, and realized. My soul preached to me, exhorting me not to limit time and space by saying, here, there, and yonder. Before my soul preached to me, I felt that wherever I walked was far from any other place. Now I realize that wherever I am contains all places, and the distance that I walk embraces all distances. My soul preached to me and said, do not be delighted because of praise, and do not be distressed because of blame. Before my soul counseled me, I doubted the worth of my work. Now I realize that the trees blossom in spring and bear fruit in the summer without seeking praise, and they drop their leaves in autumn and become naked in winter without fearing blame. My soul preached to me and showed me that I am neither more than the pygmy nor less than the giant. Before my soul preached to me, I looked upon humanity as two people, one weak whom I pitied and the other strong, whom I followed or resisted in defiance. But now I have learned that I was both and made of the same elements. My origin is their origin. My conscience is their conscience. My contention is their contention. And my pilgrimage is their pilgrimage. If they err, I am also in error. If they do well, I take pride in their well-doing. If they rise, I rise with them. If they are inert, I share in their slothfulness. My soul spoke to me and said, the lantern which you carry is not yours, and the song that you sing was not composed in your heart. For even if you bear the light, you are not the light. And even if you are a lute fastened with strings, you are not the lute player. My soul preached to me and taught me much, and your soul has preached and taught you as much, for you and I are one. Khalil Gibran, if you want to know the source. Over the next years, I became hungry for new learning to express my newfound understanding. Many of my favorite sources emerged in this period. One of the most moving is an account of how nationalism destroyed cultures and people of color in this country. It is an account of the 1890 massacre of hundreds of Lakota Sioux, men, women, and children at Wounded Knee, South Dakota. It was spoken and remembered through the eyes of a Sioux holy man, Black Elk. In 1932, near his death, Black Elk gives an account of this massacre, published in Black Elk Speaks by John Neihart, for those of you that know that source. It describes the unprovoked murder of hundreds of men and women and children by the U.S. Army. He was both a witness to and a participant in the fighting at Wounded Knee, in which he was severely wounded. Shortly after the murder of Sitting Bull and the massacre, the local paper, the Saturday Pioneer in Aberdeen, South Dakota, published the following editorial. The whites, by law of conquest and by justice of civilization, are masters of the American continent, and the best safety of the frontier settlers will be secured by the annihilation of the few remaining Indians. This editorial was written by L. Frank Baum. Those of you might know him as the author of The Wizard of Oz. Having confirmed my deepest suspicions about the politics and the hypocrisy of traditional Christian religions via my newly acquired seminary experience, I entered my lost years phase, where the old religious structures were gone, and I found nothing to replace them, except for the occasional encounter with a person or a piece of writing or a song that bubbled up the spirit within me. Several experiences stand out, which I later understood to be a source of inspiration. The first was a hiking trip to the Grand Canyon in my graduate school days. I had just ended a marriage and was in a particularly low place in my life. On the last night of the hike, one of those awe-inspiring moments came to pass spontaneously as some 30 hikers from all over the world gathered in the campground and decided to have an international dinner as we shared the food and drink that we had left over from our hike with each other. What a feast. Food from all over the world. It brought home to me deeply that we are truly one human race. Later that night, about 2 a.m. to be exact, I was awakened by what appeared to be a very bright light outside my tent. Getting up to find out what was there, I opened the flap of my tent, and to my astonished eyes appeared the most amazing starlit sky I had ever seen. In that moment, I became one with the universe in breathless wonder. All feeling of self-doubt was erased in that moment, at that transcendent feeling of oneness in all existence overwhelmed me. Another of these enduring sources from that period took the form of an unexpected series of encounters with an actor and Taoist priest by the name of Kai Di. Some of you may remember him as the character Wo Fat in the original Hawaii Five-0. You remember the Chinese-looking guy with the big mustache? That's that's Kai-Di. He had a restaurant in Phoenix, and I would go there on occasion on Friday nights, and he would hold court in his wisdom, and he was very wise. His words were a source of great profundity and would catch me off guard, as I did not fully anticipate the power of his words until I got to know him. I remember to this day his wisdom that a good Taoist is not a proselytizer in any way, shape, or form, but holds out that a good Taoist helps a Christian become a better Christian, a Jew become a better Jew, an atheist become a better atheist. These were radical ideas that I had never thought of before. He was also a proponent of world citizenship, that nationalism was wrong, that nationalism should be overcome with a recognition that we are all brothers and sisters, regardless of race, country, religion, gender, or any other characteristic. Boy, does that sound familiar. Later in my adult life, as my role as a single parent of a challenging child wound down, I found myself drifting into old age, feeling alienated and without a close connection to anyone. It was then that I began to search again for something new to inspire me. Again, sources emerged that inspired another rebirth. I found the gift of that rebirth in many writings and music. You've heard me talk about my favorite book, Anam Cara, by John O'Donohue. It's an incredible book. Anam Cara is Gaelic for soul friend. It's how to become a friend to your own soul. It's a wonderful book. I also often, and you've heard me quote from his book called Benacht, which is the Book of Blessings. I've read many of his blessings to you from this pulpit during the years that I've been here. I've also been struck by the song that you heard Deb so beautifully sing, a song by Kevin Welch, a singer I know from Austin who writes beautiful music that inspires me very much over and over. I've also been inspired by the poetry group that I belong to through this church. Many of you belong to it. Elliot, I see you there. Sue, yeah. The poetry of Rumi, very inspiring. I attended a UU service for the first time some 5-6 years ago now. And when I read the 7 principles, I literally let out a gasp of joy that I had finally found people that shared the values that I had come to through my own devious means. Let me conclude this indulgent biography with a personal piece of poetry that expresses the inspiring role that these sources have been in my journey to help me find this tribe. So again, a seeker, a traveler to rediscover life I became, to define anew what matters most, my spirit to reclaim. Midnight meditations, song lyrics, inspired self-conversation my teachers would be, if only I could truly, truly see of how to find clarity into the path of giving, my all into the fierce heat of living. With courageous heart and voice clear, living my everyday life without fear. And now, seasons later, still seeking, but with occasional doubt, still relearning that the unknown is what courage is all about. And in the end, blessed to know, you see, that on my journey to find you, I found my way back to me. Let's stand and sing number 188 in your gray hymnal. Come, come, whoever you are.